This is kindness and greed in King Lear. When kindness occurs in King Lear, it's really just used to kind of show that the first glance is not always a true glance. The only time this point is not really true in the story is when Cordelia is trying to show love to her father by giving him true kindness. And like my second point, true kindness does not come with guarantees, though it has to be its own reward. This reward is kind of like her ending up giving her father love, not because she wants land, not because she wants power, but because she wants just her father's love. She doesn't care about the power that she could gain from it. And really, it's sad because in the story, Lear calls his daughter Cordelia's family, he calls them unkind, even though she's the one that really loves him the best and is on his side throughout the whole story. And Lear ruining the kinship that he had with his daughter because he chose the appearance of kindness over the reality of it really just destroys the whole idea that there's any kindness within Lear himself. In Jason Kerr's article, The Tragedy of Kindness in King Lear, he says that Lear is depicted in a world governed largely by cruelty, especially cruelty within the families. And this is really shown through the fact that Lear was willing to banish his daughter from the kingdom because she didn't show him this false flattery, this false idea of it. But later on in the end, Cordelia's kindness really showed her father who was truly on her side and who was willing to stick near him even when he was in the wrong against her from the beginning. And she was also super compassionate to stick with her father even after her sisters betrayed him, because she could have, she didn't have to go back, really, I don't think, to take care of her father. But in Act 4, Scene 4, she is sending soldiers to seek her father, and she says, seek for him, so that maybe in hopes that they'll find him and be able to save him from her sisters and get him back on the throne. King Lear showed early in the play that he was willing to give up that relationship with his daughter because he wouldn't be kind to someone who really didn't, quote-unquote, love him. And Lear's daughters, Regan and Goneril, showed a fake side of them and their families to give King Lear an idea that they would be the right people to take care of it. But in reality, they showed their true faces, and they tried to hurt their father, tried to get rid of him in order to take over the kingdom. And Cordelia, for most of the play, is struggling to get her father to realize that she's the one that truly loves him, and she's willing to do anything. She fights. She comes back. Over and over, she comes back to try to save him, and this ends up putting her at her father's mercy. And like Jason Kerr said in his article, that Lear kind of saw her as a threat, not necessarily because she was a threat to his kingdom, but because she was not willing to give him this false flattery, give him this false idea of love that just wasn't true. Lear's division of the kingdom wasn't because he wanted to divide the kingdom between his daughters because he loved them and he thought they would be good leaders. He really was wanting to give the biggest piece of the kingdom to whoever will show him the most flattery, give him the most, quote-unquote, like I've said, quote-unquote, love. And he starts this off by creating a competition, saying, "Which of you shall say doth love us most, that we our largest bounty may we extend where nature doth, where with merit challenge," kind of just showing that he's wanting to create a challenge between them so they will fight, and this creates a greed between the sisters, Regan and Goneril. And so Lear only knows how to show love, not like a fatherly love, but just by giving them material things like land and power. Power's not necessarily material, but the material idea of being able to rule a kingdom. And then in Act 2, Scene 4, he talks about man's life being as cheap as beasts, that this is him just basically showing a greedy side of him, that nobody else matters but himself, and that he only cares for what he gets and what not even really his daughters get. Goneril and Regan expressing that fake love to their father in order to inherit power and pieces of the kingdom really is a greedy thing to do. They were only in it for that, and their husbands were also just really wanting to get that land and money and power, and were willing to do anything to get it. And Goneril's quote, where she talks about her father saying, "Sir, I love you more than words can wield the matter," is just putting on a big show. That's all Lear wanted, was a big show of love. He didn't want he didn't want real love. He just wanted this big show. And so he got it, and Edmund come up with a plot trying to destroy his brother's reputation and relationship with his father in order to get power, was willing to destroy Edgar's whole life to try to take him down. And in Edmund's soliloquy, "Now God, stand up for the bastards," that's Act 1, Scene 2. You see that this was Edmund trying to show resentment towards himself for being illegitimate towards his family. He was, he felt awful later on, but it was too late to try to fix anything. Regan and Cornwall blinding Gloucester after they find out that he's really just being loyal to King Lear, and them accusing him of being a traitor, they punished him by blinding him. And the quote from Regan, "One side will mock another, the other too." This is her just kind of showing that she's willing to do anything to make sure that she makes a mockery of people that are still on Lear's side after they've been trying to take over power. And Regan and Goneril actually begin to rival one another because they both become greedy, that they need more power, more land, and Regan really pulls a really bad thing. She goes and becomes a relationship with Edmund, making Goneril jealous, trying to show that Regan's willing to do anything to get more power, and she will destroy any relationship, any person she has to get to that. Andrew Hiscock's article, Shakespeare and His World Testing Us to Our Very Limits, he says that Lear's spectacular acts of misgovernment unleash a whole host of inexorable powers throughout a tragic universe. This is really just kind of him explaining that Lear is not a good leader, and this is how the story begins to make the family begin to fall apart with the greed and the kindness. And the kindness really only is pulling Cordelia down. And betrayal begins between people who are gathering around like flies on a corpse. Betrayal begins early in the story with the whole plot between Edmund and Edgar. And you see everyone willing to do anything. And Lear thinking he was being kind to his kin and kingdom by cutting up his country before his death, but really all he did was just butcher it to where even his truly loving daughter was destroyed. The gift wasn't pure. It was just a way to get love from his daughters, even if that love was false. This is just showing that Lear's greed was just only for himself, and it ended up destroying him and the whole family, pulling everyone down, and eventually a lot of them to death. Lear's lack of concern for the difference between real love and love is just a show that ends in death, and in the death of the people who are truly on his side. Gloucester ends up blinded. He can't really do too much to help Lear anymore. Cordelia ends up being killed later on in the story. And this really just shows him he didn't have any concern for anything or anybody really. And he was just looking to make sure that he gave the kingdom to whoever would show him the most love, give him the most flattery. In conclusion, Lear's choice of the perception of kindness over the reality of it was what kind of led to the death of the daughter that he said he had the most favorited, and his decisions overall lead to the fall of himself and his family by rewarding not love, but greed disguised as love. His giving of the kingdom to the people that only were wanting to get the kingdom and not the ones that truly loved him, just put her in a terrible place and ended up killing Cordelia, put him in a terrible place, and left him without anyone that could help him near the end. Cordelia's kindness ended up getting her in the same place as the rest of her family. She tried to help her father as much as she could, and she come back with an army to help him, but it ended up only getting her killed, and the whole family was just annihilated because they placed their value in the idea of power rather than anything tangible or true. Love is not necessarily tangible, but it is true. And if Lear would have put the love into his daughter that truly loved him, he might have been able to save the kingdom, and the kingdom could have went on well and would have been ran well and would have been ran by the right person that needed to be running it. So I think that the greed and the kindness here just annihilated everything. And while these being two opposite ideas, they put together that they both came together to kind of annihilate this family throughout the whole story.